I want to do something here that I think is very appropriate. I'd like to have all of the speakers who preceded me to come up here because I think it's time to recognize the people that did all the work on this, because I just came here to take all the credit. So it's a good arrangement for me. Rosemary, you started. All the speakers who are here, please come up and stand behind me. One of the things you people will tell you about me, I like to have a lot of people around me. And when I get through speaking, I like to send a lot of people to jail when I'm finished. and I want to rephrase that. I like to have a lot of people go to jail with me when I'm finished, because I think I've been arrested more than any labor leader in the United States and maybe the world. And I'm quite proud of that, because I think it carries the tradition of Mother Jones forward, because she was never afraid of jail. In fact, she kind of liked being in jail and challenging the authorities everywhere she went. So now what I need you to do, I want y'all of you to stay here so you can get all this credit, okay? Stay here until I get finished speaking, but right now I want you to all give these wonderful people who worked so hard, and Rosemary was so smart inviting me here. She indeed deserves a lot of credit for that. Just hang around. I'm not really going to send you to jail today. So I would like to just thank the people in Illinois for a number of things, if I might. First of all, in 1890, when the United Mine Workers Union was formed, where was it formed? Who in there knows? Who's got, by show of hands, how many of you know that history? Where was the union formed? In Columbus, Ohio. And what day? Anybody know that? What month? January 25th, 1890. And in those days, you only had union miners, for the most part, from what was known as the competitive central competitive field, right? Which was Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. In the state where I was born, West Virginia, I'm more cold than anybody, and our state was pretty much 100% non-union, which was a real sore spot, not only with the union, but the co-operators who said, Steve, if you don't get West Virginia organized, we're not going to stay organized, because we cannot compete. And you hear that all the time, don't you? You can't compete with those people down the road here in another state, somewhere in China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, you name it, we can't compete with them, so you've got to lower your standard of living today, right? Kind of the same thing was going on as they looked to West Virginia in those days. But within about 7 years, first time you see Mother Jones being employed, I think, by the United Mine Workers, it was before 1900. Mother Jones is making her way to West Virginia in 1897. And she came to West Virginia to do what? To organize West Virginia. And she brought a couple of buddies with her. Samuel Gompers was one of them, the first president of the AFL. All right? And who did John L. Lewis first work for? Samuel Gompers. There's a little history here today. And by the way, I was a coal miner working in coal about that high. And the union said to me, I want you to think about it. Show you how smart I am. The union said, would you like to come outside of the mine and teach some classes? I said, when and where and what day do I leave here to go do that? So I taught classes for 4 months, and I learned a little bit more about our history while I was doing that. And that's really how I got to be where I'm standing today, because without that first opportunity, by the way, any of us that has the opportunity to help a young person step up in our movement, we ought to be doing that. And if we can get a chance for a woman to do something in our movement, we ought to be doing, or a person of color. And I listen to people say, we need to do more of this, but when you get to be president of the union, you can do some of those things, and we have done that. And I think all of us ought to be about that business, by the way, because it's about all of us. Every single one of us have something to offer. So now let's get back to Mother Jones real quick. In 1897, she comes to Samuel Gompers. You know who else came with her? Eugene Debs came with her. Hey, there you go. Can you imagine the three of them hanging out? I'd like to be in a hotel when I'm there sipping on a beer and talking about people. Right? I can get some knowledge there, buddy. But Mother Jones came in the early 1900s, and she pretty much got a lot of West Virginia organized, and when she left, it went back to being non-union. So she comes back years later, in 1912 and 1913, by the way. And how is she being paid? She's being paid by the union, but she couldn't be paid by the union if it wasn't for the coal miners in the central competitive field, and a lot of them right here in Illinois. So thank you for paying for Mother Jones to come to West Virginia. I don't think anybody's told you that lately. But so she's in West Virginia in 1912, and a mine war breaks out. In 1912, 1913, I don't mean a strike. It started out as a strike, but it turned into a war. And she encouraged people to do something. You know what she said when she first got to Paint Creek and Cabin Creek? Does anybody know this quote? And forgive me for the language, but I'm just quoting Mother Jones here. I can try to clean it up, but it won't sound right. Mother Jones had a rally, and she said to the striking miners, all of you ought to just turn this strike over to the women because you don't know what you're doing, you're a bunch of cowards. That's what she said to the striking miners. And said, go home and arm yourselves. Go up Paint Creek and Cabin Creek and kill every one of them son of a bitches and burn all their tipples and you'll win this strike. And they said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And that's what they did. That's when martial law took over and people went to jail. Mother Jones, by the way, a little thing here for you to remember, almost died. And during that strike, they arrested her. By the way, I think she got 20 years at one time there. But she was locked up in a house, in her house arrest, and she got pneumonia and almost died. And we had a change in governors, and he came in and saw how sick she was, put her in the hospital, that saved her life. Other than that, you never heard of anything after 1912 with Mother Jones. But what she did was remarkable, because everywhere she went, she was just, one of her favorite titles was what? Hellraiser. She loved that title. Radical, most dangerous woman in America. She loved that title, right? So where did she go straight after Paint Creek, Cabin Creek? She goes to Ludlow, where, by the way, 13 women and children were brought alive by the Baldwin Belts Guards from West Virginia, who the Cabin Creek, Paint Creek miners have been fighting with, right? So Mother Jones didn't know geography. She didn't limit herself to one particular area. If she did, she'd stayed here in Illinois, right? But she came to West Virginia. She went to Colorado. She went up to Pennsylvania. She went everywhere. And in those days, you had to travel by train. But one of the things that has stuck with me, and I believe is instrumental for us all today, when those 13 women and children were burned alive in Ludlow, by the way, that was a Greek tent colony. They were kind of divided up even in those days by the Union because that's who they wanted to be with people who they came there with. There's almost all immigrants. In one of the worst winters in the history of Colorado. And they were on strike for a while. They wanted a safe place to work. They wanted their own union check weighman because you got paid by the ton in those days. And they wanted to be treated just halfway decently, right? But the co-operators wouldn't sit still for that. And the day that they went on strike in Paint Creek and Cabin Creek, they were not only jobless, they were also homeless because they lived in company houses, right? That same thing happened at Ludlow. So they had no place to live and either strike. So now they're all striking at Ludlow, and they take a machine gun and start firing into the tents at Ludlow. By the way, it's the same machine gun they used on Cabin Creek and Paint Creek, of all things. Same Baldwin Belts thugs, right? So the thugs head that way, and so does Mother Jones. But at the end of the day, the Greeks rose up and they killed most of those Baldwin Belts thugs who were acting in those days as National Guard because the state had no money to pay them and the co-operators started paying them. They did the co-operators' business, right? They drove them out of Colorado. And some people say, well, gee, that was violent. No kidding. The mines in this country at the time this was all going on were the most dangerous place you could be in the United States of America. You'd have been safer on the front lines of World War I than a coal mines in the United States of America. So what we should look at is what were the miners fighting against. They saw their friends get blown up. They seen their friends get killed. They seen their friends lose their legs. And over and over and over again. And one little thing for you to remember as you leave here today, the United States of America never had a federal law to protect coal miners in this nation until what year? 1969. 1969. We never recognized black lung or pneumoconiosis as an occupational illness that should be compensated until 1969. We never tried to do anything about it until 1969. So why do we have so many strikes in the coal fields of this nation? Because of the way miners were being treated. So let me leave you with what Mother Jones said when she gathered all these strikers up at Ludlow, because they did eventually lose, right? And he's got all the women out there and all the kids out there in front of her and all the men who've been on strike. She looked them dead in the eye, and how many leaders would do this? She had said, "Sure you lost. Sure you lost. But they had bayonets. And all you had was the Constitution. And any conflict between bayonets and the Constitution, bayonets will win every time." Then she said, "But you must fight. You must fight and win. You must fight and lose. But beyond anything else, you must fight."
Yeah.
So now we are in a time, and don't get me wrong, I've had my days of frustration too. But I want to say something about today's coal miners who I represent, if I might. In 1989, we had just gone through 8 years of Ronald Reagan. We were in the middle of George Bush 1. Strike after strike had been broken. People said you cannot go on strike in the United States.